name's Leah Busque and I'm the founder of TaskRabbit. Over the past year, we've seen a rapid increase in the number of companies that have been formed around the idea of sharing. Using technologies such as social, location, and mobile, we've been able to leverage a core foundation that allows us to create trusted connections both on and offline. This movement is called collaborative consumption, and it's disrupting industries in every sector. It's fundamentally changing the way we consume. It's about granting access over ownership. Here at TaskRabbit, we're really excited and passionate about this collaborative consumption movement, and we want to do everything we can to dedicate ourselves to enhancing this community. Today, I'd like to introduce you to a series of podcasts that we're calling Collaboratively Speaking. Over the next few weeks and months, I'll be joined by founders, entrepreneurs, executives, journalists, and consumers who've become authorities on this collaborative consumption movement. I hope you'll join us over the next few weeks and find new ways that you can work together collaboratively. Today, I'm really excited to be launching our podcast, Collaboratively Speaking. Our very first guest is Shelby, the founder of RelayRides, a peer-to-peer car sharing platform. Let's check in with Shelby and see what he has to say about the collaborative consumption movement. So, Shelby, thanks for being here for our very first podcast of Collaboratively Speaking. Super excited to have you here.
Good to see you, Leah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so I want to talk RelayRides and just kind of get the background story, how you started, what inspired you. I know we both started in the Boston area, but can you give us sort of the founding story?
Sure. Well, I sort of got my entrepreneurial legs with a nonprofit startup called Kiva.org. Mm-hmm. So Kiva got started in about 2006. It's a peer-to-peer microfinance lending platform. So you can loan $25 to a baker in Kenya who needs to buy an oven or something and start an income-generating activity. But it was the first time I really saw two things. One was the power of social entrepreneurship. What could be created by a small group of really passionate people with a crazy idea. And the second thing was the power of connecting people online for an offline impact. Mm-hmm. So I'd been on Facebook for a while in 2006 when I got involved with Kiva, but so I was used to making connections online, but they really stayed online. And so I was really excited about this concept of being able to actually impact the offline world through the connections that we were making. So Kiva inspired me to start a company, but I had sort of no ideas or time or money or partners. There's a couple of the details that are helpful in starting a company. So I decided business school might be a good way to spend a couple years in a fertile environment. So enrolled at Harvard in the fall of 2008 with a really strong focus on entrepreneurship. And I'd been, if I rewind a little bit, I'd been a Zipcar member for a little while and loved the concept of car sharing, where I was planning on buying a car and signed up for Zipcar while I was looking for a good deal and deciding what I wanted. A year later, I realized I never bought a car, and had all the mobility that I needed, lots of flexibility. I could take a convertible to the beach or an SUV to Tahoe, and I also just drove a lot less. If you don't have a car sitting downstairs, it's not your knee-jerk reaction. So I walked more, I biked more, I took public transit. Just felt really like a healthy decision, and so. But I was a little disgruntled in that I couldn't really find a car easily on short notice that was close by. So it's all sort of culminated in this really nasty winter day in Boston.
Some nasty winters in Boston.
It sounds like we both had our founding stories came out of just these nasty Boston winters.
So true.
So I reserved the closest Zipcar to me, and it was 2.5 miles away. And so I had to hop on my bicycle and sort of trudge through the sleet and the snow. It was coming like every direction. And I'm passing all these cars that were sitting on the side of the road, and sort of something clicked. I went back to those Kiva roots about connecting people online and realized that car sharing is this great resource. But the answer to my problem about being able to get a car close by on short notice is not more cars. We have cars. We've got lots of them on the road. 260 million in the United States alone. And so sort of realized that if we can find a way to make it safe and convenient for people to connect within their own communities, then we can take this great concept of car sharing and make it way more scalable and way more useful for more people in more areas.
Very cool. So you were at business school in Harvard, and did you start the company there while you were still in school, or did you kind of wait until you graduated?
I started at school, so academics quickly became this cute hobby.
Yeah, right.
So I came up with the idea at the end of the first semester, and it was really the last year and a half of business school is where we got things off the ground. Okay. So spent a year and a half figuring out if I was the only crazy person who let a stranger drive their car. Turns out I'm not, so that's good.
Right.
Finding a team, figuring out technology, raising some seed capital, and then figuring out insurance was really the long pole in the tent. It took us a year and a half to get an insurance product. We didn't launch until right after I graduated. So not sure if I would have finished if we would have gotten off the ground earlier. There's a illustrious list of Harvard dropouts who have done decent things with their lives. So, but made it out, graduated the MBA, and launched right afterwards. So got things going in Boston, and then raised some capital, raised for Series A in December out here. Okay. One of the reasons why we moved was we actually had a lot of trouble raising capital in Boston. So they just didn't really seem to get the idea or the vision, and Silicon Valley got it. They liked it, and so I didn't need to be pried off of the East Coast. It's tough to argue with California. So we came out here, got the company going out here, and then did a really cool deal with General Motors last October. So
tell me more about that, because I feel like out of all the different sharing economy businesses right now, I think this is one of the first examples of how you've been able to partner with this like mainstream big infrastructure company that has been around for years and years and years. Like, how are you shifting and disrupting this industry for General Motors to get involved with you guys? It's amazing. It's
really exciting. I think that it really has a huge potential to really help us accelerate and bring car sharing to way more people. So the way that it works is that we did a technology integration with their safety and security platform, OnStar. So since the early 2000s, every GM car has come standard with OnStar. And among other things, if you lock your keys out of your car, they can remotely unlock the car for you. So for us, when we have to get access to the car, that's just a brilliant integration. And so the way that it works is that GM car owners can sign up for RelayRides and link their OnStar and their RelayRides accounts. And then when a renter has the car reserved, they can just walk up and unlock the car with an app or a text message. So
cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful integration, just totally frictionless and really exciting. So,
and what do you think attracted them to approach you guys?
So we approached them,
okay.
Went out and talked to them and sort of helped them understand that there's this shift in consumer behavior. People are sharing things increasingly.
Right.
They're sharing skills or time. They're sharing cars. They're sharing apartments. They're sharing high-end, dresses and handbags. And so there's this whole shift in consumer behavior that's not just growing; it's accelerating. And whether they like it or not, car sharing is going to continue to grow.
Right.
And so. What car sharing brings is that not everybody wants to buy a car, and so fewer people will buy cars, and you just can't force somebody to buy a car. If they're not going to, they're not going to. And so what we help them realize is that what they can do is with those consumers who don't want to buy a car right now is they can expose those consumers to their brand, and they can start building relationships with them and getting them loving GM cars.
Right.
So we help them, understand that it's in their best interest to have as many cars as possible in car sharing to be GM cars, and this is one of the ways that they can really, connect with a younger generation, the millennials, and start to build their brand and relationships. So, for me, it was, really exciting to see this. I think if I thought about it a couple of years ago. In terms of how we'd be received by the automotive sector, I initially thought that we would be that we get a lot of trouble from them.
Right.
If you think about any other industries that have been disrupted by technology, the record labels, the TV networks, they've really tried to stifle innovation at every step. And even one of our fellow sharing economy companies, Airbnb. The hotel lobby in New York has really been giving them a hard time, passing laws that make it more difficult to share your apartment. And so it was really interesting to sort of see them, not just, accept but embrace car sharing. And, I think it's really forward thinking of them and really exciting for the growth of the industry.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the community aspect of what you guys are doing. And I think, the community aspect is such an important foundation or pillar in any of these collaborative consumption sharing economy businesses. So how important is community to you guys, and how do you cultivate that?
Well, I think community is incredibly important. In fact, we recently brought on a CEO, and my title now is Chief Community Officer.
Oh, awesome.
So it's something that I think is really important. And one of the reasons why was because I noticed the strength of the community early on. Even whenever we were still pretty small, it felt like there was a lot of energy within the community. And specifically, when I talked with both sides of the platform, it felt like they felt like they were helping the other. So car owners felt like they were helping renters by providing them a way to get around,
right?
Which I sort of expected. But what I didn't really expect to hear was that renters felt like they were helping owners by providing them income, almost like supporting a local business. And so you have this, I'm sure it's a similar dynamic with TaskRabbit.
It is, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you guys have any interesting relationships or stories? Like, have people just like struck up relationships because of RelayRides?
We haven't had a lot of stories of that yet, but because the main reason is that people don't really meet up that often is because it's technology intermediated.
Right. Which is kind of key to the whole model, right?
Yeah.
It just makes it super easy.
It takes the friction out.
Yeah.
And so we want to find a way to help to cultivate those interpersonal, relationships and, reconnecting with your neighbors.
Right.
So we're still thinking a lot about that. But, I was just really struck by this concept of neighbors helping neighbors and realized that if we can really build a strong community and a well-lit marketplace that people feel safe and comfortable in, then it will become our most valuable resource.
Right.
And if we don't get it right, then we can't build a business.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So it's we're I think one of the key ways that we can really build out the community is by helping to foster trust and reputation. So helping to establish a real identity and then a meaningful reputation, so that if you're frequently renting cars and treating them really well, then that's meaningful and it will improve your ability to use the marketplace. And
yeah, I mean, how important is that trust, reputation, safety, security you guys, and I mean, how are you developing an infrastructure that supports that?
So we're thinking about it in a couple of ways, and so one is sort of trust and reputation, and the other are getting people to behave well, and the other are sort of systems that go above and beyond and just to keep people safe in case something does happen. So specifically, I'll talk about the second thing first in terms of some of the systems we've created. We have an insurance policy that covers every reservation. So accidents happen, and whenever something does happen, the RelayRides policy will stand there. The owner's policy is not implicated in any way.
Now, was this the insurance policy that took about a year and a half
yes.
to get set up,
It
right?
was.
So that's some serious infrastructure that had to be in place.
We had to have it.
Yeah.
And the second thing is something that we've done a little more recently, where we've really implemented best-in-class fraud and identity theft systems. So basically, when a car owner rents their car out, they can be really sure that the person renting it is who they say they are.
So how important do you think it is for, speaking about trust and reputation, for each collaborative consumption or sharing economy company to have their own system internally and then an external system that's augmented maybe across different platforms? Like, how specific do you need to get for RelayRides where it might not be as specific for TaskRabbit in some of these security trust layers?
I think it's really important for the individual companies to maintain their own reputation systems. And the reason is that this is absolutely core to our business. We have to get it right. And anything that's that core to your business, you can't outsource. You can't not have to be a core competency. And so, there's just going to be a lot of nuances in terms of what's important to, in the reputation of a rabbit compared to the reputation of a renter for us.
Right.
That said, I think that there are a lot of common ties that go between. And I think one of the challenges will be to figure out what information is shared in what ways. How do we protect people's privacy while still holding people accountable? And how do we share the right parts of the reputation for the right, what's contextually relevant for somebody from RelayRides going to TaskRabbit and vice versa. So, hopefully we can come together as an industry and have that conversation because I think that all of us can really benefit if we get it right.
Absolutely, I completely agree. So, since launching in 2010, right? Have you seen anything that's surprising to you along the lines of demographics, user data, anything you expected, and then once you launched, saw something different?
Well, let's see. I think we had a good idea of what our renters would look like. I think car sharing has been around for a while with Zipcar, and I don't think that our renters are fundamentally different than the rest of the car sharing industry. People tend to be young urban professionals, frequently 20s and 30s, so the median age is the early 30s. The single highest indicator is secondary education. So people who are well educated and can embrace new ideas, early adopters, if you will, and also people who have a slightly higher than average income. So basically, people are choosing not to own a car as opposed to not being able to afford one. Car owners, on the other hand, we didn't know what to expect, and what's been interesting for me is that it seems that the demographics of the owners is broader. So I expected it to be.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
broader.
It's slightly older.
Yeah.
And you have these sort of long tails, people into the retirement age, and I didn't expect that.
Right.
I could not. I didn't expect my mom to rent a car out.
Right.
I think she will, because I'll make her.
Are the motivations different for those demographics? Like when you get into the retirement age, is it maybe less about the money and more about participation in the community, or have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, I think so. That probably as you get a little bit older, it's people really like the fact that it's good for the environment and good for the community. And in fact, I was talking with a guy on the bus last week. I had my RelayRides bag, and he noticed and started talking to me.
Nice.
And he was asking me, he's like, I don't really care about the money, but it just seems wasteful to have a car sitting around. I'd love to let our neighbor use it, and can we work out some sort of barter system where maybe they leave him a bottle of wine or something? And it's like, aside from mixing cars and alcohol,
right?
But,
might want to put a pin in that one.
I was really intrigued by his comment. Just thinking about wow, this guy. He's more interested in helping his community and the environment than he is about making money.
Right.
And so, I think that you certainly have both sides of that. I think different reasons will speak to different people. But it's interesting to see, how varied the stories are, much more varied than I would have thought.
Right. So with all the different collaborative consumption companies popping up between, sharing clothing, sharing rides, sharing cars, sharing time and skills, what do you think is unique to the automobile industry and with RelayRides?
Well, I think that it's an industry that's really ripe for innovation, where not that the others aren't, but the automotive sector, the American model of car ownership is incredibly wasteful. The average car sits idle 92% of the time. There are 260 million cars on the road. That's 1.2 cars for every licensed driver. I mean, that's more cars than drivers. I mean, a lot more cars than drivers.
Right.
And at the same time, it's one of your most valuable assets. For most people, it's their second most expensive asset that they own, and it's just super wasteful. I mean, think about a business that has an asset that's getting a 5% utilization rate. I mean, that would just never happen.
Right.
And so, in the past, it was just never an option for you to rent out your car. I think when you think of some of the other really successful companies, Airbnb, they've made it much more mainstream to rent out your primary residence. But people have been sort of used to renting out apartments or vacation homes for a little while. So, I think that this was an area that it's just been its legacy. It's what the American dream is. It's you grow up and you buy a couple of cars and you get a big house with a garage for those cars. And
right. Do you think it'll take more time to change that behavior, change that thinking, and get this more mainstream because of all that legacy?
Well, probably, but I think it's already happening.
Right.
So I read an interesting article, I think it was in the LA Times, it was called Rebel Without a Car. And it talked about James Dean and his character in the 50s or 60s, I can't remember when it was, but he was his car. I mean, he was defined by his car. And I think that at that time, a lot of people were really defined by some of their possessions, specifically cars. They're extensions of their personality. I think so the article went on to talk about that millennials are they feel a stronger connection with their mobile phone than they do with their car. And if you think, it makes sense to me, if you think about social media, all of the ways that you can express yourself are so much more robust than what you can do with just possessions.
Right.
And so I thought it was an interesting sort of contrast in this article to say, hey, this really long-held, ingrained belief about success and what it means to be successful in our society is changing, and it's changing rapidly. So I think we still have a long way to go, but I think we're well on our way.
Cool. So where are your biggest geographies right now? You're in San Francisco. Are you focused on specific areas here or other areas as well?
So right now we're in Boston and San Francisco, we've really been very focused on sort of building hyper-local scale within some of these markets.
I think that's incredibly important in a lot of these sharing economy companies that are local.
Absolutely.
I mean, you really have to understand the market dynamics in each region, I think, to be successful there.
Yeah, if there are no cars near you, it's just not relevant.
Right.
And so, and they have to be pretty close. They have to be walking distance. So I think that may change as we start to serve suburban markets. I think the use case will be a little different as opposed to being a person or family's primary mode of transit, maybe their secondary. So we talk a lot about what we call 1.5 and 2.5 car households. So this is families that always need one car and sometimes need two, and they frequently round up. So they'll get that second car. And when they buy cars, they'll buy, the just-in-case cars. They'll buy the big old SUV that covers them whenever they need it, even though a Prius would be fine for 95% of the time. And what we're hoping is that, by providing people access to the big SUV for the one time a month when they need to carry around 6 kids and a dog, like Kobe.
Especially Kobe.
Especially Kobe.
Yeah.
We're hoping that they can make smarter mobility decisions. So. We'll see how things play out as we expand to the suburbs, but we've been really focused on these two markets, and one of the reasons is just around operations, having to install. Right now, we install a little device in every car that provides access. So as we roll out this partnership with General Motors, which is coming soon, I'm counting the days.
Very exciting. So soon, like months, weeks, days?
Soon, like
I can't wait. That's going to be awesome.
I can't wait either. But when it does roll out, it changes sort of our operations and allows us to grow in different ways. So we've got a big expansion planned, and
so tell me a little bit more about what's next for you guys. What are the big things you're focused on this year, next year?
I'd say that there are probably two main things that we're focused on, and definitely the General Motors partnership. It's something that if we get it right, I think it can be really great for the community. As I mentioned, the operations are different, so it allows us to start moving outside of the areas that we're currently constrained to. Hopefully, can allow us to start experimenting in suburban areas, and I think just can allow us to really pick up the pace. And the second thing is expansion, so moving outside of just Boston and San Francisco. So, I think they're definitely related. I think the GM partnership that allows us to start expanding.
Seems like that's going to be just a huge catalyst.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's great. So on a higher level, where do you see the collaborative consumption movement going next? This year, next year? I mean, I feel like in the last 3 years, everything has changed. The landscape has completely changed. So where do you think we're going next?
Well, hopefully mainstream, right? So,
Yeah.
I think that, we've done a good job, building out these communities in San Francisco. But you've got to get outside of, what about Denver and Oklahoma City? And how do we start, building up, both awareness that this is possible. It's not crazy to let a stranger drive your car. With the right mechanisms in place, it can be really a healthy, positive thing.
Yeah. Do you ever get any inquiries or even comments from people international where they think this is an interesting model?
Yeah, they definitely.
Because we get those all the time too.
Actually, Europe is much more active in terms of peer-to-peer car sharing than the United States. The sort of the Wild West for car sharing, at least, is sort of South America and Asia, and I'm really excited to see how and if things develop there. If you look at the developing world, sometimes they leapfrog technologies. So a good example is phones. So I lived when I worked for Kiva. I lived in rural Uganda, and nobody had a landline. There's zero landlines. Even businesses didn't have landlines. Right. But everybody had mobile phones. Everybody, even extremely poor villagers had mobile phones. And that was an interesting dynamic to see. And so, what I'm hoping is that in the developing world, as you have these emerging middle classes in India and China, that as opposed to adopting, a wasteful American model of car ownership, that maybe they adopt car sharing instead.
Well, it's interesting to think about how much more efficient these collaborative consumption companies are, right? Between car sharing, between, skill sharing. The phones is a great example as well. I mean, it just makes sense, right, for them to go into it. Yeah, they should totally do it.
What was really interesting was I watched Bill Ford gave a TED Talk last year, and he talked a lot about mobility as opposed to selling cars. And one thing he specifically talked about was what would happen if India and China adopted this American model of car ownership. It was really interesting to sort of get his backing and his perspective in saying we need this. So it's interesting to obviously we think this is the way things are going, but it's really interesting to get perspective of somebody like Bill Ford to weigh in and say the same thing.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, Shelby, thanks so much for joining us and helping us kick off the first collaboratively speaking podcast. It was a lot of fun. I think you're doing amazing things, and I'm super excited to see what 2012 brings for you guys.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm a big fan of TaskRabbit as well, so keep up the great work, and I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you.